and welcome to another special on-location episode of the Lehigh Valley with Love podcast. I'm with the Historic Bethlehem Museum and Sites Director of Marketing, Craig Larimer, and we're here at the Gemeinhaus, might also be known to some people as the Moravian Museum. Correct? So thanks for having us. This is a lot better than my usual digs when I'm doing a podcast. So I love to be in these historic buildings that you drive by or walk by every day, and sometimes you don't get the opportunity to be in them. So this is fantastic. Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. It's nice to host you in our facility here. And you're right. Having grown up in Bethlehem, we can talk about that for sure. But a lot of people who grew up here and still live here walk among these buildings and sites and have no idea what they're missing.
Sure.
Or if they have checked them out, it's been a while, or you hear that a lot. So that's sort of my primary responsibility, is to let them know that we're open for business and we're happy to see them.
And, I guess just as an aside, we were just at the library renovation and we posted a picture, and there was some guy in there like, I haven't been to the library in 30 years. And the response was, you should go. So we're going to talk a lot about events today, but even the non-events, even when it's just a weekend and you can come to this museum, or my favorite, the Kemmerer Museum. It is great that we have these resources, and we're lucky, to be honest, to have these to just enjoy on our own, let alone talking about tourists and other people coming into Bethlehem and what these sites offer to them. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about you. You're new to the position, but definitely not new to Bethlehem. I know you personally from the Morning Call, working there for you said like 30 plus years and all different
30 years.
All 30 years and all different facets. So can you talk a little bit about your Bethlehem time before we talk a little bit more about the historic Bethlehem?
Yeah, and it's all pretty interesting. My parents are from Pittsburgh. That's kind of where this starts. It starts with your parents for all of us, doesn't it?
Right.
My parents are from Pittsburgh. My father and his two brothers attended Lehigh University from Pittsburgh. And if you've been to Pittsburgh and you've been to Bethlehem, you know that the two towns aren't, they are very similar.
They are.
They have a lot of similar qualities. Steel towns, hard work, approachable people, good-natured people who are welcoming. And my family certainly fits that bill. So my dad and my uncles were students at Lehigh University. My dad came over here looking for a job and got a job as a general assignment reporter with the Morning Call.
Okay. What was his? Was he a journalism major back in that time?
He was. I believe he was a international relations major, more interested in maybe studying. I don't know. He was a gifted writer, for sure.
Right.
And both of my uncles are as well. And it's a treat to go back and read my dad's stuff.
Yeah.
And he covered
like the stories he was writing about.
Yeah, he started as a general assignment reporter. So he was doing cops, he was doing City Hall, he was doing things like that. And like most of us, you learn a little bit and you prove yourself a little bit and you're given a little more responsibility. So he started covering Lehigh University football, wrestling, basketball. Okay. And, we're living in Allentown at the time. We moved to Bethlehem in 77. Okay. But growing up with Lehigh just a few miles south, going over there to experience Lehigh University football sort of in their heyday in the mid to late 70s. They were winning.
Right. I'm sure like as a kid and you're on the, D1, it's crazy, right?
So. It was so much fun just to grow up with my dad. And he was sort of like a mini celebrity too. You go to games with my dad, a Friday night football game, he'd ask my brothers or me to help him keep the stats. And he did need our help, because there's a lot to pay attention to, but he was also easily led to distraction because, he had a lot of fans in the press box, and walking up to the press box, a lot of people knew, Terry Larimer, and wanted to talk to him about the Lehigh game that was coming up on Saturday or the game that they were about to see. So that was sort of my first exposure to journalism, but more my exposure to a lot of people because my dad knew a lot of people.
Right. It's almost like, wait a minute. What do you do when you leave here? Oh, you have to write about all this? It's like, it's crazy.
And to me at the time, I don't think I even had an appreciation for what those deadlines were like, or that he had to, I knew that he did it and I knew that it happened, but I wasn't quite sure how much was involved. But, I was in grade school and I knew that the idea of turning around a paper in a relatively short period of time was a challenge. What a gift, to be able to actually sit there, watch a game, and then interpret what happened, interpret the plays, interpret the circumstance and the importance of that Friday night. And then, make it relatable, and then tell great stories about the students and the players who are behind the wins and losses. So, I went to Freedom High School. Was really fortunate to be there when I was there. I was an athlete. I played soccer.
Yeah.
And we had some great teams.
Don't you I know that you post all the time about the alumni game. Do they still do that? Are you guys still?
Yeah, that's a big
chugging
part
along.
Yeah, I mean that's a really important occasion for me, and I think everyone who does carve out the time to get back for that. I mean, let's face it. I mean, you're making some meaningful, long-lasting relationships, and we certainly had them on the soccer team, and we won just about everything. You
guys were that good.
In 4 years, we won almost all of our games. I think, maybe you lose a state semifinal or
rough, right?
or you have a long lasting, draw. We have the Pennsylvania state record of the longest overtime game, longest game of all time.
That's on YouTube, I believe. So if I can find it, I will drop the notes. I'll drop the link in the comment for the longest soccer game in PIAA history, I believe, at least in playoff history. So you graduate from Freedom. How do you get to the morning call? And then
I was an art geek. I love to doodle, love to draw. Tried to do well enough in all my classes, but I really, really did well in left my own devices to be creative, to do illustrations, do some drawing. Had some great teachers. Ralph Salazar was one of my favorite teachers growing up at Freedom High School. He really did embrace the notion that I could do this professionally in some way, shape, or form, commercial art or advertising or marketing.
When you hear that from somebody you respect as a kid, you're like, okay, maybe I could. That's important to have that type of support.
Yeah, and that guidance was essential. So I wanted to keep playing soccer. I wanted to study art. I looked at Moravian. I looked at some smaller schools. Actually found Wilkes University, about an hour north of here. Right. Similar fit, similar size, similar look and feel to Moravian. Got along really well with the coach up there, Phil Wingert. He recruited me to come up there. They had a small but growing art department that had some pretty gifted instructors. Sure. So went up there, studied fine art as a fine arts major with a focus on what they called communication design. So I wrote for the newspaper, did some radio stuff, some
It must be neat too to be like, hey, I'm going with this stuff that I really enjoy, this art, and then I'm maybe dabbling in some of the stuff that my father instilled on me in the writing side too. That's neat.
Yeah, I got injured too playing soccer, and I wanted to stay involved with the team. So I figured the best way to do that was to write stories about the game. So I would travel and do little write-ups for the school newspaper.
Embellish it a little bit?
I try not to insult anyone,
Well, yeah, they'd be like, I saw the article you wrote about my missing the goal. But yeah.
You don't want to do that. Right. You don't want to insult or embarrass them. They're your teammates. You want to portray what they did in a favorable light, but you want to stay true to what actually happened. So in 91, there was an internship opportunity at the Morning Call in their advertising design department. Applied for that, got the job, did it for the summer. My father and I commuted into the office together. He didn't really have too much to do with it. He spotted it, and that was about it. He said, hey, we have an internship down in advertising, but he was in editorial, and the two were very separate.
But that's part of it, right?
Yeah,
that's why you have a dad who can help you out. It's kind of nice too, like if he can be, maybe there, but not over your shoulder as well.
Yeah, and he certainly was not that. I mean, he dropped me off and give me a hard time about maybe being late, but start my day at 8:30. But it was great. I mean, it was a great opportunity. Did a lot of great work. And while I was there, I met Lorianne Wookich. So Lorianne is the president of Historic Bethlehem Museums and Sites. And I got to know her while I was an intern at the Morning Call in 1991.
Oh, wow. So you're working with her now. I don't want to gloss over your 30 years of the Morning Call. I bet that's, its own podcast within itself. But I know you from your writing and seeing you out and about. So, how is it to kind of maybe wrap up that part of your career
Sure.
and transition into what you're doing now with historic museums and sites?
Yeah, so started in 91 as an intern. They brought me back in 93 full time, and then little by little, bit by bit, developed their website.
You can do that good? Okay.
Yeah, we'll develop their website. They had an intranet site they were working on, started developing those things. That was sort of my bridge into joining the newsroom, is that, through building the website, I had to be familiar with the daily news stories were and the photography and the graphics and those things. And then I started working as a designer in the newsroom. And that sort of built upon itself, designed Page One for a number of years, led the graphics and visuals department at the Morning Call for a number of years as well. And then they moved the design work outside the building. And the publisher said that I should apply for the position as features editor. And I thought, well, if the publisher's telling me to do that, I should probably do that. But I had written some things, I had proven that I could write and could, edit and, have a mastery of the English language. I can do anything I put my mind to.
Right.
So started doing that. I'm sure they were looking around thinking, what does this guy know about this part of the job?
What do I know about podcasting? You know what I mean? It's almost the same. I don't want to equate it to that, but it's really, you do it and you take your time to learn. And I'm sure you had, like you said, your pedigree there, you did have some knowledge. So it isn't like you're just running in there with no idea.
Yeah. And the thing about it is, George, is that, we were the last stop. I mean, we had to see everything. We had to understand the story. We had to understand not only what the visuals were, but also the background of the story, the context of the story. We would sometimes jump in and write a better headline or a headline that happened to fit better. So, I mean, you were involved in every aspect of it, even though your title said, visuals editor. You were an editor first. So you were responsible for all of it. So it was great training ground. And, but I mean, it was time for a change. And, the operation got smaller.
Yeah.
And I had been doing some colonial brewing over here too. So that's another love of mine and passion of mine.
Like you personally brewing? Like, is it colonial style? Is that what I'm like? You brew it as if they would have back in the day?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So a good buddy of mine, Chris Bowen, had been doing that for,
I met him.
Chris is dynamite. And he's curious and he's an historian and he's got, great stories to tell and things to share. And he loves to experiment. So my wife and I were over at Blueberry Festival, just taking a walk. And we saw he and another buddy doing this brewing over a wood fire in July, the hottest day of the summer. And I'm like, what are you doing? And he said, we're brewing like they used to in the, 18th century, doing this portrayal of Johann Sebastian Gundy, who was the city's first brewer and became a civic leader. Not necessarily.
The Gemeinhaus, located on Main Street. That's what the visitor center is. Right?
Correct.
All right.
Correct. So I started doing that. That was about maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. And got to know the people here at Historic Bethlehem a little bit better, Larimer and what she was doing. I knew Larimer. She was supervisor. She was also a friend. And we got along and we would have conversations and, sort of created another bridge for myself, when it came time to make the change from the Morning Call. It's a great opportunity to be here. Working here now is perfect timing for me.
And I think it's interesting too, like with your position, and I've seen other people I know who kind of transitioned from journalism for some obvious reasons, as things get tighter on that in that industry. But it's great that you're able to take all that knowledge and things that you learned, and now you're giving it. I mean, they're paying you, but you're able to take that for an organization that maybe possibly in the past, I don't want to take anything away from anybody, but maybe didn't have some of that prior training when you're talking about public relations and that. So I just think it's a great resource to have somebody who just has all that, the wide knowledge, the Lehigh Valley knowledge, and how to get that information out to people.
Well, thanks for recognizing that and for saying that. And I do take a lot of pride in it. I mean, that is, I think, the most important thing about what I'm bringing to this position. I'm from here. We live only a few blocks away. I walk to work. I'm in it. I love Main Street. I love the people here. Charlene Donchez-Mowers, the former president, is a friend.
A legend.
She is a legend. She's absolutely.
And we'll talk a little bit about more her efforts.
An amazing influencer and, creator and developer and innovator and relationship builder. I mean, you couldn't do what she's done without having the patience, the understanding, the educational background, the passion, and just the thoughtfulness and consideration to bring people together to make things happen the way that she has. It's really quite amazing.
And I think some people, I don't want to speak for everybody, but they hear historic Bethlehem museums and sites and they go, oh, okay, so we're going to go to a museum. It's going to be that type of day. And it can be. I find it, like, I love going to museums, but for some, they might just think of it that way. And while you are that, and while you do have the resources for the museum or in it, there's so many more fun things that you're doing. You mentioned the Blueberry Festival, which is a historic Bethlehem Museums and Sites event. But can we kind of maybe start wherever you would like to start? I know that we have an event coming up even this weekend. So let's talk about events in general, but then also that specific one that's this Saturday.
Yeah.
Saturday, May
6th?
May 6th.
That's this Saturday.
Yes.
That's a few days from today. Yeah, so we have an event that's coming to the grounds just behind us at the Moravian Museum between the Old Chapel and Central Moravian Church. At the Gemeinhaus, which we're sitting in. It's the Antique Treasure Show, and it's our take on PBS's Antique Roadshow, which if you've seen that, folks are going to show up to have their items appraised by professional appraisers. It could be a watch, it could be a piece of art, it could be a home artifact.
It could be something they found in their garden, digging in historic Bethlehem, and they get some pottery from the 1700s. Yeah.
So you show up, the professional appraisers, it's a show. So they're going to be mic'd up and people are going to be invited to come up, talk about what they brought. And the appraisers will talk about the item and give a little bit of background about it and then give them an appraisal and an asking price if they're interested in knowing what it might go for. They'll find that out too. So it should be a nice day. The weather, I looked ahead, the weather's supposed to be decent. So we'll be outside here on the green. And we're looking forward to the event. We did it last year. It was pretty popular. So we're bringing it back as a May event.
And of course, this is probably going to go out on this is Friday. So you might be listening to this Saturday morning. If you're unable to make that event, there's so many others that are going on. And what I like what you just said, you're having this outside on, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but some of the property here that would be possibly, a future UNESCO World Heritage Site if everything goes correctly, knocking on wood.
Right.
For everybody involved, they've been doing a lot of work there. But it's just very interesting that not only are the events fun, but they're also in the shadow of these historical buildings that are just so well maintained and preserved. Yeah.
So, if you can't make it Saturday to this event at the Antique Treasure Show, Saturdays at Burnside are another exciting program, and I adore that space, George. I know you love it too. The Burnside Plantation, our little farm in the city, colonial farm, just behind Moravian University, right along the Monocacy Creek.
You feel like you're in another world. Honestly, even when you drive down there, but once you park and you walk out, it's just where am I again? It looks so good. It's so well kept. There were people there last time we went. We were just walking through, and they're taking care of the garden. They're volunteers. So yeah, it makes you feel good.
Yeah, it really does, and it's sort of the best kept secret. I wish more people knew about it. That's maybe one of the reasons why we're talking today. Sure. When people do find it, when they take the time to locate it and they're there, I mean, it's kind of magical. We had a few weeks ago the vintage baseball game. Right. That was great. We had a great turnout for that.
A lot of coverage on that too.
We did.
Really unique. For people who aren't aware, they played a baseball game as you would in the 1800s. And, as simple as that sounds, it's fascinating to watch that take place. It's like a Civil War reenactment, minus the bloodshed.
Right. There wasn't any bloodshed. There were no accidents, so we were lucky on the day. But the great thing about Burnside, for the Saturdays at Burnside program, it's the first Saturday of every month. Okay. And you can check out the colonial barns, the rustic barns. There's 2 massive barns, a corn crib. There's a beautiful colonial garden that is it's manicured and cared for by the volunteers. And Pat Kapora is sort of our master gardener out there and make sure everything is in line for plantings and then for picking. There's also, starting in June, we'll have a U Point We Pick event where, they're going to be growing all kinds of vegetables and herbs and things like that. And people can show up on the Saturday at Burnside event and, have an idea for what they might like to make a salad or maybe some kind of an entree. Yeah. And, have an opportunity to pick out some things they'd like. And then the gardeners pull it and you can take it home with you. It's kind of a nice event.
You don't even have to do the work.
That's right. Well, we'll be asking you to become a volunteer or to be involved in some way, shape, or form.
But also, there's spring walking tours as well.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, sure. Well, we're in the Gemeinhaus. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the most popular tours is the Old Bethlehem tour, which
Mm-hmm.
really gives you a good feel and read for our story. That's why we're here. We're here to bring history to life by telling stories of the history of Bethlehem. And it started with the Moravians. And it's an incredible story about how they were town planners and people of faith, people of education. People
Mm-hmm.
were educated men and women, which was,
Really
a breathtaking step in the right
Moravian
direction.
College, the first college to educate women in
Absolutely.
the United States. Yep.
So you get a sense in the Old Bethlehem walking tour what they were about, what the Moravian backstory was. And we have an opportunity to walk through some of the facilities that they constructed, that they worshiped in, that they taught in, that they met in, just to get their act together and to do the town planning and to make the town work.
Mm-hmm.
So the walking tour is great for that, walking through a lot of the historic structures in the area and just give you a little bit of color and background about that.
And I personally feel like those are even good if you live here.
Yes.
In fact, I feel they're better if you live here, because then when you have people come and visit, then you know all the cool stuff and you can walk around and kind of give your own version of that tour. That's why I love, going on those things, is to take the history. We used to lead a couple of the Halloween tours,
Mm-hmm.
the ghost tours, I guess. And that was just so much fun because I got to also learn all the history in addition to walking through. So I definitely recommend those for people who live here too,
That's a good one. In addition to that, we'll have coming up in May, offering a tour that's specific to the colonial industrial quarter. That was the United States' first industrial park. I mean, had everything there from silversmith to a tannery to a grist mill.
Was it the first waterworks anywhere?
Yeah. They were pumping potable water out of a spring and pumping that water up to the area which is now this where Central Moravian Church is, and then delivering potable water to the community. That was the first of its kind. It's an innovation, and that was happening in the middle of the 1700s. Mm-hmm. That's really amazing when you consider that. It was.
It's amazing that you can go visit that pump house, down in the
colonial
industrial quarter.
Yeah. So that's another tour that we have that's coming up. So as far as tours go, those are two really good ones.
Sure.
Just behind that, we have an exhibition that's coming in the beginning of June. It's called The Stories of Silk. It's actually called Unspun, The Stories of Silk. And it tells a story about the early Moravian experimentations with manufacturing the world's most luxurious fabric. From silkworms to cocooneries to those.
Really?
They were, yes, this is actually, it's a story that we're working on right now and working on the panels and the installation. So just telling that story and how that influenced the manufacturing, and the creation of so many silk mills in the Lehigh Valley.
Yeah,
it was, if you think about it.
The silk mill in Easton, that's renovated. They're doing fantastic things there.
So that experimentation led to an inspiration, which led to the silk mills that we had in the Lehigh Valley and that flourished in around that time. So that exhibition is coming June 1st, and that runs through January 2024. And that'll be at the Kemmerer Museum, which is right next door to us, and the Moravian Museum, which we're sitting in right now. In addition to that, there'll also be a component across the river at the National Museum of Industrial History. So all three locations are working together to tell that story.
That's really neat. And then you also have the Rooms to View house tour. I don't know, like during the pandemic, if that was a thing that you were allowed to do. I don't think so. So is it coming? Well, I'll let you talk about it. But June 9th and 10, Rooms to View house tour returns. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So that event has been going on for quite a few years. It's a very popular event. I love the preview night. There's a big preview night soiree, and there's a preview house that we have lined up. It's just west of Center Valley, just west of the promenade, with a beautiful view of the entire Lehigh Valley. There's a preview night celebration where it showcases a home, and then it sets up the event itself, which we're featuring, in addition to that home, 9 other homes in Bethlehem and the surrounding areas where, you drive by these places all the time, and I wonder what that place looks like inside.
Sure.
These beautiful homes and their gardens, and you have an opportunity to go in, to meet the homeowners, to hear a little bit of a backstory of, the place, the dwelling, the grounds, the garden. It's a pretty nice event.
I did one, and it was one of the homes just past, I don't say exactly which, but just past City Hall, if you were going east. And one of the, you walk in, just like, this is, you know, I live half a mile from here, and this house is just insane. And it's just, and not only that, it's just the historical nature of it, you know, the architecture, and then, of course, the ways that they're staging their homes for this event are just, you know, it's really, really interesting to see, even if you're kind of not into this stuff. I don't know, like it's just a really neat thing that I'm glad that I have the opportunity to check out.
Yeah, and if you're interested, you can get tickets. Visit our website, historicbethlehem.org. Tickets are available now for all the events that I mentioned. The tours as well. You can book a tour or get a custom tour if you get a group from work who wants to get together for a team builder or something like that. You can do that as well, George.
And I mean, is that, as we come out of the pandemic, it seems to be a theme. It just was, because we're able to do these things again a little bit without worry. I mean, of course, we're always going to be cognizant. I think everyone has a different idea of what safe is for them, and that's always going to be welcomed, you know, but it's fun to be able to talk about these events and just be like, hey, they're open, and we're come out and participate, and here's the information. So, I mean, are you guys just as jazzed as you can be in a historical setting for, you know, these events coming up this summer? Because there's something going on every week. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I mean, yes, every week.
Yeah. And I think that is the interesting part of this, is that, you know, we have a giggle about it. You know, you hear the word museums, and like you hear the word education or to learn, and it's like, but really, I mean, there's some really cool things we have here within that sort of traditional museum notion that you might have, a preconceived notion about a museum, like the toy exhibit we just had over at the Kemmerer Museum.
Well, the toy exhibit, but it was band toys. It was toys that could blow your finger off. Well, I mean, there were a couple, but you know, they're like lawn darts. So it was more, it was a real exhibition that was really, like, I took a bunch of photos of it and shared it just because it's so interesting. It's not just that, I guess what you say, your expectation of this must be boring. It was not at all. Like they had the crazy, like, electro gun and all that fun stuff that you just never really see in person anymore. So stuff like that's really neat. Kemmerer Museum, years ago, they had a tattoo event that it was like the art of tattoo, but then the Alexis, who was the owner of Electric Cheetah Tattoos here, very famous. She had a TV show. She was somebody who was giving the presentation there at this museum down the street. So that ever since I went to that event, it's always been a special place for us. And I think Kemmerer is one that kind of gets lost in the shuffle, not because of anything that you guys do, just because it's, you know, it's a smaller, maybe seems innocuous, but when you walk in there, there's so many fun things. And I got a tour of the dollhouses in there, and it's just, I can't even really describe it. It's if you are in, because the part of the Kemmerer Museum where they have it is like that legit back end of your museum where you have things in storage, but it's state of the art. So it was just really neat to see some of those ancient artifacts, you know, kind of in some of the new settings. So I can't say anything better about the Kemmerer Museum. It's a really fun spot for me and my family.
Yeah, that's a good take on it, George. And you're right that, you know, the history of Bethlehem, yes, it's 1741 history, but it's also, you know, 1800s, 1900s. So people who have, you know, amazing, you know, collections and are kind enough to donate them to us temporarily or permanently in our permanent collection. There's a lot of interesting stories behind some of those artifacts and objects. So the cool thing about the museums here is that there's not a huge investment in time. I mean, you can breeze in and breeze out. It's not like you have to make this massive commitment to being in the place. I mean, and if it's a nice day, you can drift in and check it out and get a feel for it and then wander outside, and there's greens and gardens and things you can see. So, you know, it's not stuffy. It's not uptight. It's very loose, familiar. We're good people, welcoming people who just want to help you understand the importance of being here and living here and worshiping here. And, you know, it doesn't have to be dull. Learning does not have to be dull.
Well, my daughter and I are walking through Moravian's God's Acre. For people who are unfamiliar, any Moravian community always set aside an acre of land. They kept it away from the water supply, and that was where they buried their dead. And in Moravian, or in Bethlehem, you know, you have American Indians who were buried there, African American slaves who were buried in there. It was everybody. And I think that kind of, you know, collectivism and diversity is something that we can still celebrate today. And I guess my point was I'm walking through that cemetery with my daughter, and she's asking, are we allowed to brush off the graves and all that? Why are they all flat? I'm like, they believed in the democracy of death. Everybody was equal. They don't have these big monuments for this is the richest guy in town. It didn't necessarily matter. Yeah. And just, I don't know, being able to be in that, and then 30 minutes later, we're having lunch downtown, and she doesn't appreciate it yet, but I think she will, as it gets older. It's just so neat to be around this history constantly as a part of our, what we do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right about all that. I mean, and you're right about, and I just love it. Yeah. It's not, she will be, it's irresistible because you're going to make it so, and it's irresistible because it is so. Mm-hmm. So how could you not? I mean, we're all sort of testament to that. I mean, when you do spend time here, it's hard to put your finger on. It's hard to actually articulate what it is about this place that is so darn special. But, it is the shops and the stores and the good places to eat and all that. But then you have this historical aspect that makes it approachable, makes it comfortable. And you're among special things when you're here. So that can only make you feel special. I think that's it. At least it's kind of it.
I agree. And I love what you guys are doing in making it fun. And it's not, anybody can do a quick flea market type thing, but taking the time to say, hey, we're going to do the antique stuff that people are really into, that shows the initiative that I see why, more people want to be involved in these events. The baseball event speaks for itself. That's totally unique. Like, who does that? So it's neat that we have these types of events to also participate in. Beyond the summer stuff, I mean, while we got you in the last couple minutes here, for people maybe who are watching this, they might not be able to be here for the summer. We know that the fall and the winter year round is always a special time. Is there anything maybe in the fall or winter?
If I could go back, I mean, we talked a bit about spring with the Blueberry Festival, which is in July, the middle of July. Right. Typically the hottest weekend of July, but there's enough shady spots and a cool breeze. And
now, Scott, we were there last year. It was, bands. It was everything you would think for a festival at Burnside.
We'll be brewing beer again this year. There is there you can get a good cocktail. You can get a beer, a glass of wine, spirits. There's a blueberry brewery tent where you can satisfy your thirst. Then we have Apple Days in September, another great festival at the Burnside grounds, similar to Blueberry Festival, but with apples. We're brewing beer then too, George. We're going to do it.
Banana Festival, and then whatever's next.
So those are great. We also have 2 summer camps that are coming to the Burnside. Okay. Well, we have one at Burnside, which is a week on the farm camp, where kids can learn what it's like to be a farmer and take care of animals, horses and sheep and goats. And that's kind of cool. And you're right there on that colonial farm. And what you were talking about earlier with dollhouses, we have a make your own miniature dollhouse camp for kids over at the Kemmerer Museum this summer as well. So if you're interested in that, moms and dads looking for grandparents looking for something to do with your
what's the youngest for that? I think we're on the cusp for some of these things. I might have to wait here. My kindergartner, I might have to wait like a year or two for some of these.
Yeah, I think it's over the age of 6 for sure, George.
6. We're coming up on 7, so I'm going to take a look.
Well, definitely take a look.
And that's too, I just bring her downtown. For me, I mean, I'm lucky that I love that I live in the city of Bethlehem. So it's great to be able to have those resources too. Listen, I'm looking forward to this weekend. We'll be down here, and we're looking forward to just more events. It's great that we're able to get back out here. And I have to admit, this is one of my favorite venues to do a podcast. You could just set up in here and have the history podcast.
We could do that. Might not be the last one. I'd love it.
It's a lot of fun.
I really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah. I love where I am right now. The work, we have a lot of work to do, but I think it's just because, there's a lot of exciting things that we would like to try and do. And we're naturally curious too. And that's what motivates us.
And I guess we should finish on this because we've mentioned it a few times. I don't want to go into too much depth because I don't have the breadth of knowledge, but we are in the process. We talked about, Charlene Doncheth-Mowers in bringing a UNESCO World Heritage designation to the city of Bethlehem. And the way that they've done it, if I remember correctly, they have teamed up with a couple other different communities, one in Germany.
Correct.
And another one.
Grace Hill, Northern Ireland is the other.
Yeah. So, and they've all teamed up, and then I guess you can, if you want to speak a little bit more.
You're doing great.
Okay. So they've submitted to that, and they're still like in those initial processes. And from what I've been told, these things, they go at a glacier pace.
Yeah.
But it may be something in the near future that we might be able to look forward to. And if Bethlehem got World UNESCO Heritage Status, we are looking at a change in the amount of people coming here, honestly, I think.
Yeah, it's been an amazing thing. It's been an amazing journey, about 20 years in the making since Charlene and Mayor at the time, Don Cunningham, had a conversation with a group of people from Christiansfeld, Denmark, who had, I believe, just become a World Heritage Site. And we would, at least we're being considered to be a part of a cluster, an expansion of the Moravian church designation. So it's a Moravian church settlements designation is really what it is.
Right.
So it's us. We'd be joining Herrenhout, Germany, and Grace Hill in Northern Ireland to join Christiansfeld, Denmark as a World Heritage Site with this World Heritage designation. And yes, we're very excited about it. February 1st is when we got the nomination from the US government. So we've taken it as far as we can take it. Now it's our responsibility to educate people about what it means. And I would encourage anyone who's listening to this or watching this or both to learn a little bit more about what it means and its significance. We're talking about 24 locations in the entire United States have this designation. Statue of Liberty, the Grand Canyon, Yosemite National Park.
Like the big boys.
And historic Moravian Bethlehem would be among them.
Right.
Those big boys, that would be the 25th. That is significant.
Insanely so. Yeah.
It is insanely significant. And when people hear that, they say, oh, well, okay, it would be only 3 in the state, with Falling Water in the western part of Fayette County and Independence Hall in Philadelphia. There's only 2 in Pennsylvania.
Independence Hall. And that's just, that's to be talked amongst, Independence Hall. I think we're on the level. We've had all those guys stay overnight at the Sun Inn, right?
That's right.
It's no problem for us to do that. It's just amazing. And I agree with you. I need to educate myself even a little bit more. I was talking to some people who are closer to it, just saying there are people who their whole thing is traveling to these sites. And they're, I don't want to talk about money, but they're big spend, they take a lot of time, it's a serious thing, which is just going to bring more and more people. But yeah, when you get on that short list, well, it makes you a little bit more, a lot more attractive than maybe some other places that are similar, like Williamsburg.
It's incredible to think that we are, this close to having it happen. There needs to be a couple of things that need to go our way. A few more assessments and things, but we're very encouraged by the progress and that we're being considered and that the U.S. government is confident that we belong there. So, and then that, like you said, the important thing now is I think for everyone to understand it, take a moment, read a little bit about it, go to our website, learn about it. You can learn about it very, very quickly. We have a timeline. We have a video that actually lays out the whole thing that
we'll include that in our links.
Oh,
just looking there,
Yeah, so the video tells the story about how we got here and also tells the story about why the Moravians, what makes Bethlehem special. It touches on all aspects of that. And we're really quite proud of the video, built it in-house and wrote it along with, the folks over there, the leadership over there and Charlene. And, it's all very exciting. It's a fantastic time to be here. Busy, but fantastic.
I love it. I'm looking forward to everything. My family's looking forward to stuff. We're looking forward to being even at Tunes at Twilight, downtown Bethlehem events where you can still see these beautiful places. I don't want to speak for every different place, but I know that there might be opportunities to go into like the blacksmith shop and stuff like that at different events throughout the summer. So keep a look at it. But most importantly, go to the website, which is
historicbethlehem.org. Check it out. The blacksmith. Visit the blacksmith, for goodness sake. Ed Land doing his thing. And
it is so neat to walk in there. There's a blacksmith downtown. I don't know his hours, but I know that he's there. And when you walk in, he's literally only the tools from that time period. And I just don't know where else you can kind of just stop and see a black off the street, in between buying a book at the Moravian bookshops. Really neat. Craig, this has been great. Thank you so much for the time. And we will hope to see everybody. Get down to the antique event this Saturday. If you can't, go to historicbethlehem.org and you get all the information for all the upcoming events. And we'll see you there.
Thanks, George.
Thank you to our sponsors, Michael Bernardin with Remax Realty, Molly's Irish Grill and Sports Pub, Wind Creek Event Center, and of course, WXPN FM.